All right, good afternoon. I am recording, so today is Wednesday, March 1st. And the first thing I wanted to tell you, and I may have mentioned this to you already, I don't know if I did or not. I have written your last two tests. So if you think the test really stunk or whatever, blame me 100% for them. All right. And along that lines, the reason I'm telling you that is I was starting to write the test for chapter 8 and 9. And it appeared to me as though we may not have done, as I say here, a deep enough dive into chapter 8. So before we go on to chapter 9, which is I do plan on doing that either tomorrow or Friday, all right, I want us to go back and take a look at chapter 8 again. And also, as far as that goes, let John in here. All right, so as I was saying, um, I have started writing the next hands-on test for chapters 8 and 9, and I came to the conclusion that we need to spend some more time on 8 before we jump into 9. You may or may not agree with this. I went back and asked Evan, and he is kind of is either has done or is doing what I'm doing. In fact, I think he's giving the test on 6 and 7 today. He told me on Monday he was probably going to give it on Wednesday and give them one more day of lab yesterday. All right. So I'm going to be doing a code along. There's actually 5 versions of this NFL Teams app. All right. And we're going to look at version 1 today. We'll see where we are time wise. If there's time, we'll start on version 2. All right. Versions 1 and 2 are in chapter 8. Versions 3 and 4 are in chapter 9. And version 5 is in chapter 10. All right. So don't worry about this URL. In fact, it doesn't exist anymore. I've renamed it NFL Teams V1.get. Get. And so we're going to be doing that. Whatever, tomorrow we'll look at version 2. All right. Again, we may get into it today as well. I don't know. It depends on the timing. And we're also going to take a good long look at that TRIPS log app. That's what your assignment is for the chapter 8 project. All right. So also, as it says on here, tomorrow class won't start until 12:45. It is the first Thursday of the month, and that's when we have our Rankin IT staff meetings from 12 until about 12:40. All right. And then if, by Friday, we'll be getting into chapter 9. What that means is since, your homework for 6 and 7 was due last weekend, there's no homework due this weekend. All right. Rather, as it says, your chapters 8 and 9 homework will be due a week from Sunday. Now, you've already noticed this. I've fallen behind. I'm giving you my word right now that I'm going to be grading on Sunday. So if you have by Sunday, if you have all of your work handed in through chapter 7, it'll all be graded along with your hands-on tests. Everything will be graded. All right. The other thing I wanted to mention, I can close this, but the other thing I wanted to mention is I sent you another email later today which has the images that we're going to need for this program, the seed data we're going to need for the program, and the connection string we're going to need for the program. I'm going to use those directly. That's going to save us a lot of typing. Now, just so you know, if you didn't know this already, all the stuff that we're going to be going over right now is in the book. The program is in the book. Not only that, all right, not only that, the code is actually, you have that in the book apps. That's one of the things that you were given at the beginning of the semester. So you've got that stuff. That said, I'm going to do it anyway because it's going to give me a chance to explain some concepts as we go through here. Now, we went over chapter 8 already, but I'm just going to take literally just a couple minutes and go back and review the stuff. All right. Version 1 of this going to start building it. And you can see the stuff that's in there. So we'll get into all that stuff. Then when we get done, we'll at least get to where we're talking about view models. What is done between version 1 and version 2 is version 1 of this NFL Teams app is done pretty much the way we've been doing things thus far. Then in version 2, what they do is they replace some of the code that they had in version 1 by using view models. We'll talk about what that means in just a second. In an ideal world, what I'm hoping we're going to be able to do today is get all the way through this, then talk about view models, talk about how to redirect requests, talk about temp data, and then pick it up tomorrow right here with version 2. All right, because that should give us plenty of time to go over that and also start to write this trips log app together. All right, that will be part of what your homework is. All right, so with all that said, let's just get started. Just so you know, I've created an empty folder right now that's called NFL Teams V1. All right, so what I'm going to do, all right, in just a minute is I'm going to start up Visual Studio, but I wanted you to know that's where it is. When we get done with that, I'm going to end up copying that. In fact, I can just do it right now. I'm going to end up making another one that's going to be called NFL Teams V2. And then when we get into chapter 9, we'll have V3 and V4. All right. I don't really see the need to put these things out on GitHub. I can, but you've already got them in the book. So you've already got this stuff. Okay. So with all that said, let's just take a look at what is in the book then. Whoops, wrong page. All right. So we've been using action results really all semester. And most of the time, what you've been doing is you've been returning a view. And when you return that view, what has happened is you've done some work in the model. The model has returned stuff back to the controller, which is about to format it in such a way that it returns it to the view so it can be shown to the user. And what I'm saying is that's not really new. That's what we've been doing all semester. And in fact, as here, all right, we have been using action result. If you remember, we've been using action result for almost everything. I is for interface. Remember what an interface is. An interface is not a class. What an interface typically has in it are a bunch of empty functions or methods, whatever you want to call them, that any class that implements that interface must add to it. All right. So we've been working with action results, and by and large, most everything we've been doing has been a view result. All right. When we return a view just directly, basically, we've been returning HTML, and that's the view result. In the last chapter, we looked a little bit at content result as well. And I mentioned that was, as they say here, it was a way to return just text to the browser. Nothing new there. And I'm not going to read the rest. You can see them yourself in here. What we will talk about a little bit later on today are the second and third one, the redirect result and the redirect to action result. The other stuff, the JSON, etc., we'll cover that at a later time. All right. And they also mentioned in here, this is not a complete listing. If you want a list of all of them, you can click on the URL right there. I'm not going to say any more than that. All right. So they talk in here about how you can return these things. And what you'll notice if you look in here is virtually every kind of result that we've talked about, all right, has a method that has the type of result. So as they say here, JSON returns a JSON result object, view returns a view result object, etc. All right, these methods are overloaded. What does that mean? That means that there are some smarts built into them that if you just return the view, as it says, it renders whatever default view for that controller an action method you've set up. Typically, as an example, it would be like home and index. But you can also, as it says there, you can return a model. Why might you want to do that? You might want to be in one controller and you may want to transfer information to another controller. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit. All right. Or you might be in one controller and you might be working in one method and you might want to call a view from another method that's associated with another method. Or as it says here, you might want to be in one view and call a view from a different model. All right. And that's the last one that's here. And again, there are examples of that in here. All right. Now, view data and view bag are a little bit confusing. All right. There, in many ways, view bag is an alias for view data. I don't really look at it as much as view bag is kind of a subset of view data, but virtually anywhere you use view bag, you can use view data. Virtually anywhere you use view data, you can use view bag. The reason I'm telling you that is you probably could even go back and look at some of the programs we've done thus far and replace the view data with view bag or vice versa, and it would still work. All right. So they mention here that view data is a type of view data dictionary. We've talked about dictionaries before. So these are key value pairs. All right. So in other words, okay, right here, the key would be book, the value would be Alice in Wonderland, etc. Hopefully you get the idea. In just a couple pages, you're going to see the same thing with view bag, and it's basically going to look the same. But it's view bag dot book, view bag dot price, as opposed to doing it this way, where you're using an array type of syntax. Now, there's a lot of stuff that goes on. JavaScript does a lot of their object-oriented stuff where you can do it either using a dot method, which is what we use most of the time, or through an array syntax like they're showing right here. They do mention here 3 of the properties that you're going to want to use with this. All right, the keys and the value and the count. And again, looking at that, hopefully taking a look right here, this just makes sense, this code that's in here. All right, the one thing to look at that we haven't really talked about is when you look in here, we are allowing for things being nullable in here with the question mark. All right. And this stuff becomes really important. If you look on the top of page 294 here, it becomes really important when you are working with, right here, we're trying to run a two upper method. All right. But it'll only run the two upper method if what we have in there for book is not null. If it's null, it won't try to do it. The reason that that is important is if we didn't put the question marks there, if we didn't have them there, and we tried to run this and book indeed had nothing in it, I don't mean the empty set, I mean that it was null, the program would blow up. All right. And part of the problem with view bag and with view data is they're not compile time smart. They don't provide IntelliSense. They don't provide compile time error checking. So you can sometimes do things, it won't flag it as an error until you go in and run the program. All right. That's why later on in the chapter, when we talk about the view model is or does have IntelliSense and does have compile time checking. That's the reason you're strongly encouraged to use the view model as opposed to just using view data and view bag. All right. Now, one big difference here, notice what it says. The view bag property uses C#'s dynamic type. In other words, it allows you to set things at runtime. All right. Under the hood, as it says there, it stores its data in the view bag dictionary. Thus, as it says, you can use the view data property to get values, add them or get them out. All right. There's a few other things they talk about casting as opposed to non-casting, etc. There's casting that you have to do more casting with view data, for example, than you have to do with view bag. All right, but if you look here at these examples, this is virtually identical to the examples that we saw. I'm not going to go back, but a couple pages ago with view data. All right, and when you look in here, what you'll notice is we don't have to do that typing like we did before. Over here before, we had to do a double, and you had to do a double with a question mark. Here, it's not that. But in the same way right here, you wouldn't want to attempt to convert null to type currency. If you did, the program would blow up. All right. So they give you in here a couple reasons you might want to use view data instead of view bag. The first one is a real big one. If you've got a key name that isn't valid in C#, that uses weird characters or spaces or whatever, you'd want to use view data. All right, because again, you're putting it into that array-like syntax where it's going into brackets as opposed to a dot syntax that you have with view bag. All right. Also, a lot of times you'll use view data rather than view bag when you want to loop through everything that's in there. All right. So this is the Teams app. We're going to start building it right now. All right. And this is the way that it should look when we get all done with it. Now let's talk about a few things that are in here. All right. First of all, this is just a bootstrap heading in here. All right. This is going to be set up as these are really two different things. I don't want to lecture to you on football, and probably one or more of you know a lot more about football than I do. But the National Football League has two conferences, an American Football Conference and a National Football Conference. Each conference has four divisions: an East Division, a North Division, a South Division, and a West Division. Each one of the divisions have four teams. So when you do the math, all right, 4 times 4 is 16 for the AFC, 4 times 4 is 16 for the NFC. So there's a total of 32 different teams. When we run this, if we've got all here and all here, it'll show us all 32 teams. We might have to go and use the, basically arrow our way down in here, all right? If we AFC and all, it'll show us all 16 AFC teams. If we choose AFC East, it'll show us just the four teams in the AFC East, etc. All right, and that's pretty much what they're showing in here. All right, we're also going to use this color coding in here so you can tell which one of these is going to be active at any one time. All right, so with that as a prelude, so to speak, let's just get going with it. So I'm going to start up. Oops, wrong file. Try that again. I'm going to start up Visual Studio, create a new project, see Windows, Web, come in here. We're going to choose Model View Controller. And of course, we want Model View Controller, this one here. All right. And next, I am just going to call this NFL Teams. I already showed you where I'm going to put it. And that's going to be in the desktop in NFL Teams V1. All right. And we'll just call this NFL Teams as well. That's fine. All right. I'm going to click Next. It's going to ask about our long-term support. This is what we want, of course, and we can configure that or not. It's not going to matter. All right. And now it's being created for us. All right. Nothing new there. We've done nothing at all new thus far. Now, one thing about this, we are going to have a database in here, but it'll be set up a little bit differently. All right, and I will get to that in just a couple minutes when we look at it, but we're going to build it. So we're going to start with the models. But before we do, we might as well come in here and go to Tools and do our NuGet Package Manager and manage our solution. All right, and then I'm going to come in here under Browse, and we'll put in our Microsoft Entity Framework. I'm just going to include all three of them. So I'm going to include Core right there. All right. And here, and install it and accept. Ideally, it'll say uninstall there. That's good. That means one is in there. All right. And then I'm going to put core.sql server in. And again, I'm going to come in with that one with SQL server and install that. And then finally, we're going to come in one more time and do the core tools. All right, then I'm going to close that and I'm going to reopen it just to make sure that all three of these have indeed been loaded. And when I look over there, you can see that yes, indeed. All right, the core, the core, the core SQL server, and the core tools are all there. Good. Well, that's a start. All right. The way that this is done, as I mentioned, it's a little bit different. I'm going to use their naming conventions, but I'm going to tell you why I don't like their naming conventions. All right, I'm going to do it the same way that it's done in the book. So I'm going to go into models to begin with. Right now, I've just got my error view model, which I really won't even need, but that's fine. I'm going to right mouse click. I'm going to choose add, go down to class. And the first one we're going to add is conference dot, oops, try it again. Conference.cs. All right. All right. Why is it giving me module? Conference. I'm wondering if when I started, I picked the wrong setting. Give me a second here. Get my stuff in gear. Rid of that. Probably will let me good. Try to figure out here between these two. Oh, I didn't. I did not pick this one, the one with C# in it. That was what was wrong with it. Okay, we're fixing it now. All right. Since it is a new project, of course, I am going to have to go back and re-add those things that I just added, but I'll add them again. I'll do them as quickly as I can here. They're all in there. Good. Okay. All right. So first we will have a conference class. All right. That looks better. Now I'm going to do it the way they do it in the book. Public string conference ID get set and public string name again with a get set. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with the way they did it. Again, what I have been doing in mine in the past has been calling it like conference name, appending the name of the table or what will be the table onto this. You don't have to do that, but to me, it makes more sense to do that. All right, so that's the first one. Now we can go if we want to and put in our question mark here, and that'll remove. All right, but I'm just going to leave them off. I'm doing it exactly the way they did it in the book. So that's our first one. So that's our conferences model. All right. Then next we've got a division model. And that looks very similar. All right. But it's got a division ID instead of a conference ID. And you'll notice both with the division ID and with the conference ID that both of these are strings. All right. And that's the way that they are actually set up in there. Okay. So for instance, the division will be like, it could be like the word east or whatever. All right. Okay. Then the next one is going to be our teams. And this one is going to be done in a different way than what we've been doing in the past. If you say, I don't know what you mean, bear with me for just a second. So again, this will be team.cs. All right. That's the class. All right. And we'll start it out the way we've been doing it. So public string team ID. All right. Public string name, again with a get set. All right. And then public string, I'm sorry, try that again. Public conference with a get set. I don't want conference in there twice. And finally, public division, again with a get set. And the last one is this logo image. Now, what's different in here as opposed to what we've been doing in the past? All right, this application, at least as this only application, this is not a CRUD app. All right, the reason I'm telling you that is if it had been a CRUD app, we would have wanted to bring conference ID as a foreign key, and we would have wanted to bring division ID in as a foreign key. We could do that. It would not hurt anything to do that. So we could do that. All right. But again, I'm following what they said in the book, and we are not going to be doing that. All right. So what do I want to do next? Well, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to build my team context class. All right. And then when we get done, we'll go into our app settings.json file and bring in our connection string. So in models again here, I'm going to come in and add another class. And this will be team context. .cs. All right, there it is. Now, this will be very similar to what we've been working with before. All right. What we do want to come in here and do, though, is we want to put a using statement in here. So Microsoft dot entity framework core, we want to add that. All right. But in here, this is going to be set up virtually the same way we've been setting up things in the past. Since we put that in, we can now say colon DB context. Oops. All right. So we are inheriting from DB context. Then, as we have been doing, we will come in and do a public team context. So we're putting in here our constructor. Options, team context. This stuff is all the same. Then you notice that after a while, how the IntelliSense always kicks in. And the reason I'm getting that error is I need my curly curly. That should make the error go away. So that is my constructor. Okay. We haven't yet been doing much, if anything, with that constructor. So don't worry about it for now. Now we've got to add our 3 DB sets. The order in which we add these shouldn't matter, but let's just put them in as public DB set. And the first one we did was conference, which is going to result in conferences with a get set. All right. Then we'll have another public DB set, and we'll have division with divisions. Oh, it gave me that, but it did. So division, did I spell division wrong previously? Division, no, I did not. All right, and then finally, we're going to have our teams. With our get set. So far, I mean, there's really been nothing new, and there really shouldn't, at least hopefully, be any questions on anything. The stuff that we've done so far should make sense. In fact, really pretty much of this whole program should make sense. All right. The only thing that's really new in here that we've started to do in the chapter 6 and 7, but we'll look at more in depth here, is working with the images in just a few minutes. All right. So the next thing we want to do is we want to add our seed data. Okay. And we'll start this out with a base dot on model creating with model builder. Okay. And then we're going to start adding our data. Now, this data, just so you know, this is what I sent you this a little earlier today. So I've got it right here, the seed data. So there it is. So there was the conferences, AFC, the division names, and all of the team data. Now, I took this right from the Murach book, so there should not be any errors in here. But I do want to talk about something that is in here, because we are doing something differently than the way we've done it before. All right, so let me come in here where we're bringing in this seed data. All right, and I'm just going to paste this in. All right, and put in my semicolon, and hopefully at least I don't have any errors. All right, now looking at this here, there's nothing new right here. You've done this before. So again, this is the ID, and that's the name. We could have changed that and made the name. We could have actually said American Football Conference and National Football Conference. They chose not to, which is totally fine. So those are our 2 conferences. Then each conference, again, has 4 divisions. All right. So each one has a north, a south, an east, and a west. So again, nothing new there. Where there is something new is right here. You may have noticed this, you may not have. I don't know. But when you look in here, we've got what? All right. We say new division or we say new conference. We don't say in here new team. And the reason that we come in here and do it like this, we are creating what are called anonymous objects right here. The reason that that's important, the reason it's important is that's why we're able to come in and put in the conference ID and the division ID. All right. Because we're setting them up like this. So this is adding all 32 teams for us in alphabetic order. So we have now gone in and we have added 3 models to represent our 3 tables, those being conference, division, and team. Then we went in and we added in our team context model as well. All right. So let me do a file save all on this. And let me close these because I don't think, at least for now, we're not going to need them. All right. But what I would like to do next is I would like to go into our app settings.json file. All right. Right here. We've done this before, but I'm going to come in here, put in a comma, enter, and this will be our connection string. This isn't anything new. We have done this a multiple number of times. All right. So again, we have in here database. I'm sorry. The name of our context, team context. And then in here, server equal, you know all this stuff already. Local DB, MSSQL, local DB. And then our database name, we're going to keep it the same name. So the database is going to be equal to NFL teams. Our trusted connection is going to be equal to true. And finally, our multiple active result sets is going to be equal to true. All right, let's take a quick look at this and make sure I didn't make any mistakes typing. Looks okay to me. All right. Don't think we need a semicolon there. There we go. All right. So that's that. Again, that most of this information so far that we've had, you've been given. All right. So I'm going to do a file, save all in here. All right. And then we're going to go over and we're going to look at the controller. Okay. So we're going to go into the home controller. Okay. And the first thing that we want to do in here is we don't need this logger stuff, so we can get rid of that. We'll keep the iAction here, and I'm going to get rid of this privacy stuff as well. All right. So we've got all that, and that cut it down. Okay. Let's see. We've got our NFL teams models in here. We won't need this diagnostics anymore. We are going to be using some link. I don't know. So I always like to put a using system.link in here. Whoops. Sorry. All right. We've got our core MVC. And let's see. Sometimes when I put those in, they'll stay gray, like I don't need them. Other times I'll put those in, and if I don't have them in, it'll want them in. So I usually add anywhere where I might be writing link queries, I usually put those two using statements in that you see at the bottom. All right. So our namespace here. Okay, the first thing that we want to do is we want to, again, come in and set up a context and then set up our constructor. So private team context that we will refer to as context, and public home controller. All right. Again, none of that stuff in there is new. So that, I mean, it shouldn't be any kind of a surprise. All right. Now we're going to change something in here. And since when we get all done with this, we got 20 lines or so, 15 or 20 lines, I don't know what it is, to type in, but we are going to be returning a view. And for the first time then, rather than setting this to the generic iAction result, we're going to set this to a view result. All right, we don't have to do that. It would work okay if we didn't, but internally, this makes the program run a little better, a little faster. I don't know exactly how else you might put that. All right, but it's better to run it that way, and you're letting the system know exactly the type of result it is expecting. All right. Now, when we go through and we look at this, let me come back to this again. Let me go. All right. And you're looking in here. All right. Right here, we have three possibilities for conference, all NFC, I'm sorry, AFC or NFC. We have five different combinations for division, all east, north, south, or west. As you can see, all of them, except for really all in AFC, these are in alphabetic order. That doesn't mean anything. But when this first comes up, when the program first starts to run, we have not yet had a chance to choose a conference. We have not yet had a chance to choose a division. So what we will do is we will give these default values. All right. So I'm going to come in here and say in here, string active conference is going to be equal to all. All right. And then also, I'm just going to move it down onto two lines so you can see all of it. String active division is again going to be equal to all. All that means is by default, all right, when we bring these in, if we don't pass anything in, it will default as though we chose all for both options. And again, that's something you learned back in the AWD 1100 class when we talked about default parameters. So that really isn't anything new. All right. So let me hit enter a few times here, move that down, and then come up and we'll start writing some code in here. All right. All right. That's exactly what we're going to do right now. All right. And after we store those, we're going to get, we're basically going to find out or get a list of all of the divisions or both, I'm sorry, or both conferences and all of the divisions. Okay. So why are we doing this? Well, what we have to know is we're going to be coming in here and something may have been passed in. All right. Or yeah, it might come up and this might be empty when we first start, meaning it'll default to all in all, but we want to make sure it can handle it when we choose AFC and South, for example, that it does what it's supposed to do. All right. So in here, we're going to do this. We're going to say viewbag dot active conference equals active CONF, and viewbag dot active division equals active division. So again, that's what we're doing, is every time we're coming through here, not the first time when we're first running the program, all right, but when we go in and start making changes, then we won't be using the default value. Remember, this is only going to be used if this gets called with nothing being passed in. All right. And again, it's as though we chose all and all. All right. But we want to find out what they did choose. Now, it is possible when they did that, they chose all and all. It is possible they did that. All right. So what we want to do is we want to get a list of all the conferences and all the divisions. All right. Anytime you really come in here and you see a to list, all right, you can kind of look at it as though it's sort of like we're going to be doing a select star. Okay. Now, in this case, we're grabbing everything. So that's like saying select star from conferences. And the next one will be like saying select star from divisions. So we're going to do another one in here. The same kind of way. All right. Now, what we want to start doing then in here with this list, again, what we want to be doing in here is we eventually want to build this and we want to build this. All right. Well, now we have AFC, we have NFC, we have East, we have North, we have South, we have West. We don't have all right here, and we don't have all right there. We don't have them there. So we're manually going to add those. All right here. So the first thing we'll say is to insert the default all value at beginning of each list, or beginning of both lists, however you want to say it. All right. So it's going to be conferences, geez Louise, conferences dot insert, and then we have to tell it where to go. So it's position 0. And what that's going to do is that's going to take all the existing ones we have in there, and it's going to move them over one to the right. So the former 0 will now become number 1, etc. All right. So we come in here with 0, and then we have to make a new conference item. All right. And it'll have a conference ID that's going to be equal to all. Let me move this so I can put this on multiple lines so you can read it okay. All right. And the name is also going to be all. Just like that. All right. And we want to make sure, somehow I lost, let's see. I want that curly to be inside of all of this. Like that. And I'll fix that other error that's in there in just a second. So conference ID equals, should be name equals all. All right. So again, what that has done is over here, previously I had only AFC and NFC. Now it'll be all AFC, then NFC. All right. And in much the same way, we'll do the same thing down here. And that'll be with divisions. Dot insert, again at position 0. And we'll do the same thing. New division. So again, all we're doing is we're basically creating those lists right now. Okay, and that's fine, but really they only exist in here. And we will want those lists that we have, the one list called conferences, the one list that's called divisions. All right, we will want those to persist in that we want to be able to use them inside of our view. So we want to come in here then, and we want to store the lists in the view bag. All right, so view bag dot conferences equal conferences, and viewbag dot division equals divisions. All right, and hopefully all of that makes sense. All right, so we're setting all of that stuff up, but what we have to do then is we have to get all 32 of the teams. All right, and in order to be able to do that, it's going to be a little bit different. All right, what do I mean? Well, I've already said this, but I'm going to say it again. If this is checked here and this is checked, we want 32 teams. If this is checked and this is checked, I'm going to actually get 8 teams. I will get the 4 AFC East teams and the FC East teams. And if either one of these are checked, all right, you get the idea. Okay. So what we're doing is we want to possibly either be returning everything or returning 8 of something or returning 4 of something. All right. In fact, there could be 16 because if you choose AFC and all, it'll show you all 16 AFC teams. So there's really about 4 different things in here that can be returned. So we want to get the teams and we want to filter by the conference and by the division. All right. Whenever we use something like this, we're going to be using an iQueryable. Okay. So, and it's going to be team. All right. Call it query. You can call it whatever you want. Equal context dot teams. All right. We're telling it what we want to search through. But now we have to check and we want to see if the conference is not all, because if it's not all, we have to make sure that there's a match. All right, that whatever we checked, again, it's going to be AFC or NFC, that there's some kind of a match. Then we'll have to do a similar thing for the divisions. All right, so if the active conference is not equal to all, all right, so we're putting a where onto here. Query is equal to the query we had dot where. All right. Putting a lambda expression in here. And I'll do it like that. Whoops. Just like that. Okay. I'm just making sure that there is a match between these. That's all. And then I want to do the same type of thing, but instead of doing it with the active conference, I want to do it with the active division. In fact, this was wrong. This should have all been conference here and here, because I'm checking the conference here. And then down here, this should be division. Right? And then finally, we want to pass teams, which again is either going to hold 32 things or 16 things or 8 things or 4 things. We want to pass that back. All right. Basically, we want to pass the teams to the view. And it's important that you understand here, because this is it. Just I have to put teams in here. That really the key thing in here is this. That's actually running the query. All right. What I'm doing up here is I'm setting up the query. So I'm saying, do I want to select star or do I want to select star from where? All right. But this is actually running it then. Okay. And hopefully what I just said made sense. All right. It is 1:02. Let's take a break. And I'd like us then to return, please, at 1:15. I'll see you then. All right, it is 1:15, so I'm going to continue on. And again, we started here, sorry, right here. And I went through this, but one thing I didn't go through is when you look right here, it says when the user moves the mouse over a team logo, that team's name, conference, and division should be displayed in a tooltip. And they give an example. So when we don't worry about this, we'll worry about that later. But the point is, look here. This says home index conf dash AFC slash div slash east. Well, think about this. All right. Two of the things that are in there are dynamic, and those are the conference and the division. The point is, as of right now, if we go into our code here and we go into our program.cs file, the only route that we have in there is the default one, which is home and index. So that's not going to suffice. So we have to come in here and we have to add another route. All right. So let's put it inside of a use endpoint. So we'll put both of those in here. So I'm going to grab this one. I'll do it like this. And then I'm going to add the other one. Remember, you have to put the most, you have to put the most specific one first and the general one after that. So don't need that. And I will need here. Oh, we'll fix it. So let's do it right now. So right here, this will be our new route. All right. So it's going to be an app dot map controller route. All right. Same way we did it before with a paren. All right. And then a name can't be default because we're already using that. So we'll just call it custom. It'll be our, oops, not customer or custom. It'll be our custom route. And then we have to give it a pattern. All right. And that'll be the controller, followed by the action, followed by CONF. All right, that's going to be literally those words. In fact, what am I got here? That's right. Followed by whatever the active conference is, followed by div, followed by whatever the active division is, just like that. All right, let me move this over a little if I can. Okay. So active div, all of that has to be inside of, so this has to be in a curly brace, and this has to be in a curly brace. And then the whole thing at the end, double quote, parenthesis, semicolon. All right. And I may have skipped something, so I'm going to look at that in just a moment here. So app map controller route. Now, this is not an area. We're going to talk about areas again, but not right now. This was not put into an area. All right. So name, custom, that looks right. Pattern, controller in curlies, action in curlies, slash CONF, slash active CONF in curlies, slash div, slash active div. And let's see, that one is going with this. So let's see. Telling me it's missing a parenthesis. There's one paren, and I thought that would have been the end one right there. Oh, why is it not liking this? Default pattern like this. This one needs a paren here. I'm going to put that in. All right, and I need my last paren with a semicolon. There we go. All right. Still doesn't like something. So we've got this goes with this. This goes with this. I am missing a curly brace right there. There we go. Well, that fixed all of it except for this one. And it says another parenthesis is expected here. So let's see. That one should be going with this one. And I don't have my ending curly brace. All right. Now, why is it doing that? I need a paren there and I need another paren here. All right. Did all my errors go away? I believe they have. All right. So we have mapped two different things. All right. So again, this will be our controller and our action, home index. This will be conference. After conference, we'll have like AFC, NFC, whatever it is. And then we'll have the division, east, west, or whatever it is. All right. Then we'll have our default route. All right. So file, let's do a save all here. And let's go back into the book. And in just a second, I'm going to go and try to build the database and see if it works. All right. So we ran through our model layer. I'm not going to read anything that's in here. There shouldn't have been anything that was a surprise, except for the fact, as mentioned in our team class, we did not add foreign keys. We did not need to add foreign keys because this is not a CRUD operation that we're doing. It's just a read operation. We could have put them in. It wouldn't have hurt anything. All right, then we did the after the other classes, etc. We did the context. We went into the home controller. Again, this is the first time we have put in there for our return type a view result as opposed to view. Either would work. This is considered a better way of writing. All right, then we use the view bag so that if we had check something other than all for the conference and or for the division, we would now have that in our active conference. So active conference is either going to hold all or AFC or NFC. Active div is going to hold either all or north, south, east, or west. All right. Then we have to store all of the information just in case they chose all up here. So that to less is basically grabbing all the conferences and putting them into our view bag called conferences. It's grabbing all the divisions and putting it into our view bag divisions. All right. Then, as mentioned here, we are querying and we are doing basically a three-part query. The first query basically is we're saying, give us all the teams, but then we're checking and we have to come through and say, hey, this is trying to give us all 32 teams right here. But then we have to come in and say, hey, just in case for the conference, we didn't choose all, meaning we chose NFC or AFC. All right, then we're going to only be returning those. And if instead of all for the division, we chose either east, what it would be in whatever, east, north, south, or west, it'll give us those. Then we're actually running the query. All right, then we're returning that view. And again, this, I guess I should have looked at it here rather than trying to write it myself. All right, we had to add that pattern. What's next is the layout. And then after the layout, we'll look at that in just a moment. There's not really that much to do. Then we'll look at the home index view. All right. And then we'll get right into view models. Now, we haven't even built this database yet. All right. We can build it right now because but it's not going to show correctly because we haven't changed our layout and we haven't changed our layout file and our index.cs HTML file. So we might as well change those. So let's go into our layout file here. Make sure I'm going to do a file save all, and I'm going to close all this stuff. All right, and I'm going to go into under views. We're going to go into under shared, the layout file. I think there's only, well, what do they tell us to put in here for the layout? All right. All right. They have us make massive changes, I guess, in here. Okay, we've got our head. All this stuff should be fine. But this will change from this to at viewbag dot title. Okay. And all of this stuff should be okay. But in here, what I'm going to do is I'm literally going to get rid of the entire header. All right. Come down into here. We also don't have a footer on here. So I'm going to remove the footer. We're not really even using these things, or I don't think we are, but I'm going to keep them in there anyway. All right. We do want a render body in here, but we also in here, we do want a header inside of our container. All right. I don't know why they show you how to do it one way and then they show you the way it's normally done, which is like this. We want that heading to be centered, our header to be centered, and the text to be white. All right. And let's see. As far as the header, we want an H1. We want the background to be primary, which is that royal or whatever you call it, blue. We want some top margin. We want some padding all the way around. And we want it to say NFL teams. All right. Now, I should be speaking to the choir here. All right. But what we're doing right here with this, right there, is we're doing that right there, the NFL teams. No biggie. All right. So we've got that done. So the layout's been done. We made those changes. All right. So what's left? The home index view. Okay. As it says there, this view begins with a directive indicating that the model is a collection of team objects. So notice this looks a little different than most of the ones that we've done. When you put an IEnumerable in there as a type, like they've done right here, what you're basically saying is, I want to be able to iterate my way through this. So I'm probably going to be using a for each statement in there someplace. All right. There's our view data. That's where we're actually setting the title to NFL teams. That's the same one we're going to be using in the layout that we just looked at. Another thing that's here that's new in that we haven't done this before, is notice what we're doing in here inside of our index view file. All right, we are writing a C# method inside of the view file. That's these lines that you see right here. All right. The reason that this is important is I want you to realize that is straight C# that we are writing. Since we are writing C# inside of a .cs HTML file, all right, since we are doing it that way, we have to put it inside of a razor block. It has to be inside in between the @ curly brace and the ending curly brace. All right. And what that is going to be doing as it's anything special to it. All right. Let's say that again. Now it says my internet is back. So what they're saying here is, again, if we have selected a class, that class should be blue. That's how we're denoting an active class. Otherwise, it's not. So let's go to this home index. Not a lot of changes, it looks like we've got to make in here, but let's bring that up next. Okay. And actually, there are changes because right now, remember, all it writes down is welcome in there. So let's do this. Let's get rid of everything and just rewrite this thing from scratch. All right. Boy, it keeps my internet connection keeps going up and down. I don't know. Whenever I complain to them about it, they say, well, you're the only one complaining. And this will be that thing to see whether or not something is active. It's giving me an error because I'm not returning anything. So let me add the return statement, and that should get rid of that error. Okay. Now, right now it's saying, hey, you've got this thing in here. It was declared, but you're not using it at all. All right. So we will use it in here in just a bit, but we got some typing to do here to finish this. And I believe that is everything in there in the div. Then we've got to do it again. So this is going to handle the conference. And again, it should color blue, the active conference. And then we've got to do a similar thing for the division. All right, almost done. All right. Make that a little smaller so you can see it. And I believe that is everything to my knowledge. Now, before we run this, it would of course be a good idea to come through here and go in to the NuGet package manager and go to the package manager console. All right. And do our add migration. And we'll just call this initial setup. It doesn't like something with team context, so we better figure that out. And then hopefully we'll be able to run it. Team context. And I may know what it is in app setting JSON file. Oh, I know what it is. It is in our in here, we have to add that, and I forgot that. We got to add that line. See if I can grab it from the author if they put it in there. Otherwise, I'll have to go look for it. Let's do it this way. Well, we need this line in here, but not Sports Pro, but with team context. So right underneath that line. So right here, we need this. Now I'll have to change that. I want this to be team context. And with our connection string, we want that to be the same name. All right, we needed a using statement up there. All right, we'll see right now whether or not I did it correctly or incorrectly. It did not make a migration, so I can still use initial setup here. One thing. Okay, so that should be the name of the database. So I did screw it up. Oops. Oh, this team context serving DB. MSSP databases, teams. Trusted connection is true. Multiple active result sets is true. That's all correct. I thought that one was also the same thing. That was team context. Because that's the name of the connection string. All right. Oh, figure out what the problem is. So this is what we're going to do. So I don't want to waste any more of my time or your time on this. I'm going to go through this until we get to, I want to go through the view model stuff in here, and we will look at the next few pages, talk about this, and I will get this fixed by tomorrow. I don't know what the problem is. All right. But when you think about what we've been doing in here, much of the stuff that we've been doing is we've been using built-in stuff. When we do a using statement, we're basically doing some built-in stuff. When we've got like a using Microsoft.entity core or something like that, we're using, that's what allows us to inherit from DB context. Well, what does that have to do with anything? Well, right now, what we've been doing so far using view bag and view data for everything that we've been doing. All right. And it's not that that's bad, but as I mentioned earlier, and as I probably mentioned the other day when we went over chapter 8 to begin with, that view bag and view data do not offer two things that are really nice to have when you are working on a program. One of those things is IntelliSense, and the other one is compile time checking. It will not give you errors if you have errors, view bag errors or view data errors until you run the program. All right. So what many developers choose to do then is rather than do it that way, all right, rather than come in and use view bag and view data for everything, they instead create a view model. And what a view model is it's something that you put into the models folder, all right? And it allows you to combine information from different tables and it's kind of a repository for lack of better words. And it can be used to replace view data and view bag. And the advantage of using that is that it does come with IntelliSense and it does come with compile time checking. All right. Now, I don't want to go and create the view model right now. All right. Not until I get this other thing fixed. But notice what it says. It's a class and it holds the data that a specific view requires. What that means is this is going to be used with just our index view, basically. All right. You don't have to end it with view model, but what a lot of people do is they just end all their models with the word model. So for instance, with what we've had in here we've had just teams.cs. What a lot of developers will do is they'll call it teamsmodel.cs. Well, we haven't been doing that all semester, but I think it's a good idea to actually put the view model on the end. So we will use teams view model. All right. Then let's kind of bounce back and forth. So it's right here. Notice what we have in here. All right. This active conference in this active div, all right, for the division, that previously is what we were using. We were storing that in our view bag. All right. Now, basically, it's part of a class. And it's very important when we do this stuff, like is shown right here, it's very important that we come in and we give it an initial value. So again, our active conference will have a default value of all. Same with our active division. All right. Then notice our team. So now what we've got in here after teams, we've got conferences and we've got divisions. So we have one class that has incorporated all three of the tables that are in our database. All right. Plus, we're now going to be able to go in, and this is what we do want to add, is this check active conference or check active division. And we're going to call that active div thing that we wrote earlier. We were getting that error earlier because we were never calling it, but we're going to be calling it in here. So they define a view model here as just being, as you can see, a regular C# class that defines a model of the data that's needed by a view. Now, really, there shouldn't be any actual code in here that goes and does any kind of processing. You can say, well, you did some here. This isn't doing any processing. All right. So it says view models by their very nature only provide data, but they can have simple methods that can be used to help display that data. All right. So when we go back to here, it's more of the same. All right. As it says here, the code example here presents the team view model class. The first two properties are the ID for the active conference and the active division. So again, for the conference, that'll either be all or AFC or NFC. And for the division, it'll either be all or east or north or south or west. All right. They have a default value of all, as we mentioned. Then they say there the next property is your collection of team objects. Remember, we talked about this before. The system could either need none, I'm sorry, it would either show 32 teams, all right, for all and all, 16 teams for like AFC and all, or NFC and all, 8 teams if you had AFC or NFC and you chose one of the divisions, or 4 teams if you chose AFC or NFC and then one of the divisions. And that's what they're saying in here. All right. Again, when you hear words like are in this bottom paragraph, lightweight classes, all right, that means they should be doing very little. All right. And again, they typically only contain data except for these helper methods. And that check active conference and the check active divisions are helper methods, as it says here, that are used to determine which link is the active link so you can make it blue. All right. As it says, this is considered acceptable because the logic only impacts how the view is displayed. However, as it says, a view model shouldn't have logic in it that impacts other parts of the app. All right. So it's very limited in what it's able to do. All right. Now, I don't want to get into this right now because, like I said, I want to get this thing to work first. So I want to go back and figure out what the problem is. And then what I will do is I will pick it up tomorrow. I'm going to create version 2. And what I'm going to do is when I get version 1 to work, is I'm just going to take everything inside and copy it to version 2. Then what we'll do first is we will come in and we will create this view model. Then we will come in and we will update the action method. All right, as you can see, there's quite a few changes that'll have to be made. So the rest of the chapter. There are different classes for redirection, and they depend on different things. All right. What do I mean? Well, you'll notice that some of these say local redirect, and that basically is if you're redirecting to something on the same site that you're on your own local site. All right. The other one are for non-local. Now, when there's a redirect permanent, what typically will happen, I believe, is that the system will cache that request so that the next time you go and you ask for the one that's permanently been redirected, it won't have to go and check. It'll just go and check and cache and take you over to what has been changed. All right. So that's the difference kind of between a found and a move permanently. A move permanently is permanence. All right. And again, there's overloads in here and they do show you some examples. Now, this is the key thing. We talked about this a little bit earlier, and that is this PRG or the post redirect get pattern. All right. And just as an example, and it's going to be not a great one, but I'm just going to give it to you. If I go out to Amazon here, all right, and I decide that there's nothing right now in my cart, but I decide I want this, let's have this one right here. So I into my cart, right? So I sit there and basically grab all that and whatever that wherever it is. Geez, it's been a while since I've even ordered anything. But there is a way that I can sit there and buy now with one click type of thing. All right. Well, typically not a buy now with one click, but when you're doing other things, like when you want a regular book, a hardcover of a book, etc., you'll click a button. All right. Not this because I don't want to buy it. All right. But when you click it, sometimes nothing will happen. You sit and you wait for a couple minutes and nothing happens. And you're not sure if the request went through or not. So you click the button again. Now, what'll happen most of the time when you do that is, sorry, it'll come up with a message that looks like this, asking you if you want to confirm that indeed you meant to order it again. All right. Now, a lot of people don't even read that or read right past it and just click continue, which means it's going to try to order it again. All right. Well, instead of doing that, you can use this post redirect get pattern. And what that will do is once it's been posted, it'll redirect you back to the get page. So, in other words, you're not sitting there wondering whether or not you actually ordered something. All right. So, you're going from post and you're being redirected back to, again, as an example, your index homepage. And that's what they explain here. I'll let you read it yourselves. And they do mention that get are idempotent, meaning that by default, get should never make any changes. All right, that's why if you're on a page and you refresh, nothing happens. It just refreshes the page. But again, there can be problems when you attempt to resubmit a post. And that's what they're talking about here. So as mentioned, to prevent that, it's common to use this PRG pattern. As mentioned there, as it says, when you're making changes on the server. All right. So as they say here, the add handles the post that updates the server. The last statement in there is a redirect to action. All right. Which tells it to issue a get request for the index method of the home controller. Most of the time that's going to like redirect you to the home page. All right, to the default of the home page. That's usually what you want to do. So the good news is that it keep you from ordering something twice. The bad news is, as it says there, is that the redirection requires a second round trip to the server. And if you're having problems or you have a slow internet connection, all right, that can be a little problematic. But as they mention here, the upside of avoiding the act of having something twice or whatever, all right, is outweighed by that typically. Okay. All right. And next in here, they talk about temp data. Now, one of the things you should remember, one of the things that you should be able to remember, all right, when from what we've talked about earlier, is the fact that the web, basically by itself, is referred to as being stateless. HTTP is, by its very nature, a stateless protocol. The system doesn't do a good job that if I go and make a request, then a couple minutes later I make another request. As far as basically the system is concerned, it doesn't know whether it's me making two requests or two different people each making a request, and it doesn't care. All right. Well, sometimes it should care. And sometimes when you're doing this stuff, you want data to persist. Now, what we will learn about in chapter 9 next, well, either at the end of this week or early next week, is that you can use, and we talked about this back in the AWD1000 class, you can use sessions and you can use cookies. All right. Now, there's a really big difference here because with cookies, cookies are basically information that is written from the server back to the client to make life for the client a little bit easier if later a similar type of request is. All right. With temp data, it's writing information to the server. It's not writing information to the client. It's being written to the server. All right. And that really is a big difference. Now, by default, when you process something in a request, boom, it does that. It reads the data and then that data is gone. Sometimes that's not what you want to have happen. Sometimes you want that data to be copied someplace else. It could be to a different view, it could be to a different controller, it could be something even other than that. That's where temp data comes in. And as it says here, the temp data property of the controller class works like view data in that it's a dictionary. So it's storing things in there as key value pairs. All right. So it says there, as a result, if you want to work with a value in temp data, you must cast it to the appropriate type. But before you do that, you must make sure that it exists. All right. So this is the big difference, and you're going to see a chart on the next page for this stuff. As it says, the temp data property differs from view data in how long the data persists. With view data, it persists for the life of the current request and boom, it's gone. All right, as it says, once the server sends the response to the browser, all the data in view data and view bag are gone. On the other hand, with temp data, the data can persist across multiple requests, even if it has been read. All right. And the way that this works is it works with, oh, maybe it's on the next page, 3 different methods. All right, we'll go back to where we were in just a second. There is a keep method, a keep with a key, and a peek with a key. The keep method says, hey, make sure all data that we have, even if it's been read already, mark it as being unread so it stays in RAM. That's keep with just parens. If I only want a specified key, so just one piece of data to be kept, even if it's been read already, I call keep and I pass a key to it. Peek, on the other hand, all right, again, it reads the value. It's a look ahead. So it reads the value of the specified key, but again, it does not mark it as being read. So the whole idea behind this is working and making things persist. All right. As it says, the items in temp data persist beyond the written request. So often this stuff is used in conjunction with that PRG pattern that we talked about. the post route get type of pattern. All right. And they show this on the next page as it says, an action method handles the post, redirects it to another action method that handles a get. Now, as it says, the post, as it says, wants to notify the user of the result of the action, but by default, it can't use view data because it's gone. Okay, so it stores a message into temp data so it can give it, basically let it know that it's there. Now, just so you know what's going to happen, and I'll come back in just a second, but in this next version of the Teams app, what's going to happen is when you choose something, all right, and I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. So if I come in here and I choose a certain team, all right, there'll be an option that I'll be able to add a team to my favorites by clicking on it. So if I clicked on the Seattle Seahawks logo, it says Seattle Seahawks added to your favorites. That's the good news. The bad news is, since we haven't talked about sessions and we haven't talked about cookies, really all that it's doing is it's giving this particular message and it's not really saving it, because as of right now, we don't actually have a list of favorites. That's something that will be implemented in chapter 9 when we come in and we work with cookies and we work with sessions. All right. So I think that pretty much is it. So again, if you want more than I just gave you on keep with a parens, peak, and then using keep when you pass it a key, you can get it right here. All right. So what we will do tomorrow then is twofold, threefold. We will first, I'm going to fix whatever my error is. All right. And I'll let you know what that error was. Then we will copy NFL Teams V1 to NFL Teams V2. All right, we will add what you saw earlier with that view model and make the other changes in the code. Again, what you're going to find when we do this, what you will find is we will have IntelliSense, and if something gets screwed up, you'll have compile time error checking. All right, so you'll have that. All right, so after we go through and fix NFL Teams V1 and then go through NFL Teams V2, then we're going to start from scratch and we're going to build this trips log. If you have not looked at it yet, please try to look at it by tomorrow morning or tomorrow at tomorrow's class. All right, so there it is there. There's our specs. So there's not really a whole heck of a lot in there. We'll see if we can get that done as well. If we can get both of those done tomorrow, I don't care if it's an hour or 3 hours, that'll be it for tomorrow. Then on Friday, I'm going to lecture on chapter 9. All right. Plus, we're going to take our time, and I'm going to be, when we get to version 3 of the NFL Teams app, we're going to implement that. When we get to version 4, we're going to implement that. That will probably take both Friday and Monday. Then Tuesday will be a lab day. I just want to see where we are then. My thought right now is probably Tuesday will be a lab day. Wednesday, I'm going to go over chapter 10. Thursday, we'll probably have our next test. So that is next Thursday, which would be the 9th, and that would be on chapters 7 and 8, or 8 and 9. I'm sorry, 8 and 9. All right, but we'll see. That's always changeable. We're doing really well in here as far as where we're at. All right, so unless any of you have any questions, that's what I had for today. All right, then I'll talk to you tomorrow.